That was before everything changed. Before a stranger's courage in a single moment would shatter the carefully constructed walls around his heart and teach him what wealth really means. Marcus had been in San Francisco closing a deal that would add another $50 million to his portfolio. The red-eye back to New York was running late, and his patience had evaporated hours ago. He'd already snapped at 2 gate agents and left a 1-star review for the airport lounge. Now 30,000 feet above America's heartland, all he wanted was silence and the illusion of control that his inbox provided. The woman across the aisle looked to be in her mid-50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and a face that had seen too much sun and not enough sleep. Her jeans were faded, her jacket frayed at the cuffs. She didn't belong in first class, he thought dismissively. Probably an upgrade. Some airline lottery winner taking up space that should have gone to someone who actually mattered. He returned to his email, his jaw tight. His ex-wife had sent another message about their son, Ethan. The boy was struggling again, she wrote. Acting out at school, refusing to talk to the therapist, spending hours alone in his room. Marcus deleted the message. He'd deal with it later. He always dealt with things later. That's when he heard the cough. It came from the row behind him, a wet, rasping sound that made his skin crawl. Then another, weaker this time. Marcus turned slightly, irritation flashing across his face, ready to complain to the flight attendant about sick passengers who shouldn't be flying. But the woman across the aisle was already moving. She unbuckled her seatbelt and slipped past him before he could process what was happening. Her backpack fell open as she rushed past, and he caught a glimpse inside. Medical supplies, bottles of pills, a worn notebook covered in what looked like dosage calculations. His eyes narrowed. Was she some kind of nurse? Drug dealer? Help! I need help! A man's voice cracked with panic from the seats behind Marcus. My daughter, she can't breathe! The cabin erupted into controlled chaos. Flight attendants rushed down the aisle. Passengers craned their necks. Marcus should have gone back to his phone, but something held him frozen, watching as the woman knelt beside a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. The child's lips were turning blue. Her father clutched her hand, his face ashen with terror. She has asthma, he stammered. But her inhaler, we forgot her backup inhaler. This has never happened before. Please, somebody... The lead flight attendant was already on the intercom, her voice professionally calm but edged with urgency. If there's a doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately. Silence. Terrible, stretching silence. Marcus watched as the woman from across the aisle opened her backpack. With steady hands, she pulled out a small case, unzipped it, and removed an inhaler. The exact medication the child needed. I'm not a doctor, she said quietly to the flight attendant who'd rushed over. But my daughter has severe asthma. I always carry extras. Please let me help. The flight attendant hesitated for only a heartbeat before nodding. Regulations be damned when a child's life hung in the balance. The woman placed the inhaler in the little girl's mouth, her voice calm and soothing. Breathe with me, sweetheart. Slow and steady. That's it. Good girl, she demonstrated, her own breathing deep and measured, and the child began to mirror her. 1 puff, 2. The woman held the girl's hand, counting softly. You're doing so well. Just like that. Color began to return to the child's face. Her breathing, though still labored, started to even out. The father was crying openly now, his hands shaking as he touched his daughter's hair. Thank you, he whispered, his voice breaking. Thank you. I thought. She's going to be okay, the woman said, still holding the little girl's hand. But she needs to be seen by a doctor as soon as we land. This is just temporary relief. The flight attendant was already coordinating an emergency medical team to meet them at the gate. The cabin slowly settled back into an uneasy calm. Passengers returning to their movies and magazines, processing what they'd just witnessed. But Marcus couldn't look away. The woman stayed with the child and her father for the rest of the flight, monitoring her breathing, offering quiet reassurance. She never asked for anything in return, never made a show of her heroism. When the plane finally landed and paramedics boarded to escort the little girl to the hospital, the woman simply gathered her things and prepared to deplane like nothing extraordinary had happened. Marcus found himself standing, blocking the aisle as she tried to pass. "That inhaler you gave her," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "That was your daughter's backup medication, wasn't it?" She met his eyes for the first time. Hers were brown, tired, but filled with a warmth he hadn't seen in years. "Yes." "What if your daughter needs it? What if—" "Then I'll figure it out," she said simply. But that little girl needed it right now. "My daughter is safe at home with her father. She has her primary inhaler. We'll manage." Something cracked open in Marcus's chest. A fissure in the armor he'd been building for decades. "Let me replace it," he said quickly. "Those medications are expensive. Please, let me at least—" "That's kind of you," she interrupted gently, a small smile touching her lips. "But that's not why I helped. Some things you do because they're right, not because there's a reward waiting." She moved past him and he let her go, standing frozen in the aisle as other passengers filed by, shooting him irritated looks. But he barely noticed them. Her words echoed in his mind, simple and devastating. Some things you do because they're right. When had he last done something simply because it was right? When had he last helped someone without calculating the return on investment? When had he last seen his own son without his assistant scheduling it 3 weeks in advance? Marcus deplaned in a daze. He made it to the baggage claim before he realized what he was looking for. That worn jacket, that practical ponytail. He found her waiting at the carousel, checking her phone with a concerned expression. "Your daughter," he said, approaching her. "Is everything okay?" She looked up, surprised to see him. "She's asking about her inhaler. I told her I'd explain when I got home." A shadow crossed her face. "It'll be a hard conversation. She's terrified of being without backup medication. But she'll understand eventually." Marcus made a decision that bypassed every logical circuit in his brain. "What pharmacy does she use? What's her name?" The woman, Sarah. She finally told him her name was Sarah, studied him with those warm, discerning eyes. "Why?" "Because that little girl on the plane gets to wake up tomorrow morning, healthy and safe because of your daughter's sacrifice," Marcus said, the words tumbling out. "Because your daughter deserves to know that her medication saved a life and that she'll never have to worry about being without protection because of her mother's kindness. Please, let me do this." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a pen and wrote on a scrap of paper from her pocket a pharmacy name and address, her daughter's name, Emma, 12 years old, severe asthma since she was 3. "Thank you," she said softly. "But Mr. Whitfield, how did you—" "Your phone screen. I saw your name when you were typing earlier." She hesitated. "I recognize you from the news. I know who you are. And I need you to understand something. This isn't about money. Emma needs to learn that we help people because it's who we are, not because we'll be rewarded. Don't take that lesson from her." She left him standing there, his expensive luggage circling endlessly on the carousel, forgotten. Marcus didn't go home that night. Instead, he went to his office and did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He called his ex-wife without his lawyer present and really asked how Ethan was doing. He listened to her surprise turn to cautious hope as she told him about their son's loneliness, his father's absence, the therapy sessions where Ethan wouldn't speak about the one thing that mattered most, how much he missed the dad who used to read him bedtime stories before empires and earnings calls took over. The next morning, Marcus drove to Sarah's neighborhood, a modest area where houses had toys in the yards and American flags on the porches. He didn't knock on her door. Instead, he went to the pharmacy she'd listed and spoke to the manager. He set up an account that would cover every penny of Emma's medication for life. No questions asked, completely anonymous. Then he doubled it and created a fund for other families in the area who couldn't afford their children's prescriptions. But that still wasn't enough. Marcus started showing up. Not at Sarah's house, he respected her privacy, but at the community center where she volunteered twice a week, teaching CPR and basic first aid to anyone who wanted to learn. He sat in the back of her class, a tech billionaire in a room full of teenagers and concerned parents, and learned how to save lives with his hands instead of his wallet. Sarah noticed him on the 3rd week. After class, she approached with raised eyebrows and the hint of a smile. "Most people take this course once," she said. "I'm a slow learner," Marcus replied, "and I realized I've spent 42 years not knowing How to help another human being with my own two hands. That seems like something worth fixing. She studied him for a long moment. How's your son? The question knocked the breath from his lungs. How did you? You mentioned him on the plane, when you were on your phone. I have good ears. She tilted her head. Well, I'm seeing him this weekend, Marcus admitted. For the whole weekend. No phone, no laptop. Just me and Ethan. I don't know what we'll do. I don't know how to just be a dad anymore. Start by listening, Sarah said gently. Start by being present. The rest will come. That weekend changed everything. Ethan was suspicious at first, waiting for the inevitable interruption, the important call that would steal his father away. But Marcus had turned off his phone. For 48 hours, the empire could run without him or burn to the ground. It didn't matter. He learned that his son loved astronomy and hated baseball, that he'd been secretly learning guitar, that he'd written Marcus dozens of letters over the years that he'd never sent because he was afraid his dad was too busy to read them. Marcus read every single letter, tears streaming down his face, and understood what he'd almost lost forever. Months passed. Marcus restructured his entire life. He stepped back from daily operations, promoted the people he should have empowered years ago, and discovered that his company actually ran better without his constant interference. He started having dinner with Ethan every Wednesday and spending every other weekend together. He joined Sarah's first aid classes officially and eventually became a certified instructor himself. The day he taught his first solo class, Sarah sat in the front row watching with pride. Afterward, she approached him with a young girl at her side, Emma, with her mother's warm eyes, and a bright yellow inhaler case hanging from her backpack. Emma wanted to meet you, Sarah said. I told her about what you did. Not the details, just that you helped make sure she'd always have her medication. She has something to say. Emma looked up at him with the solemn intensity only a 12-year-old can manage. My mom says you helped us because of what happened on a plane. She says my backup inhaler saved another girl's life, and that you made sure I'd never run out. So I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to give you this. She handed him a folded piece of paper. Marcus opened it to find a drawing, a plane in the sky, stick figures helping each other, hearts drawn in crayon around the edges. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, being kind makes the whole world better. Thank you for being kind to my family. Marcus knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. You know what? Your mom's kindness changed my life. She taught me that being rich doesn't mean anything if you're not rich in the things that actually matter: family, compassion, being present. So really I should be thanking both of you. Emma smiled and impulsively hugged him. Over her head, Marcus met Sarah's eyes and saw understanding there, and something more, respect perhaps, recognition of the distance he'd traveled. That night, Marcus took Ethan to their favorite burger place, the one they'd discovered during one of their weekends together. His son was telling him about the astronomy club at school, his eyes bright with excitement. And Marcus realized with stunning clarity that this moment, this ordinary, perfect moment, was worth more than every deal he'd ever closed, every million he'd ever made.